And we are back again, just like hack. And then it is, of course, the 26th of the 1st, 2026. The time is 22 minutes past 8. And as always, Sir John, Retro Man, John Cammy, we've got to talk about F1 because there are a gazillion F1 centric threads at which we need to pull testing. F1 apparently is content, but they decided that they were going to close the doors. Gatekeeper, God tier levels of from F1, of course. You wouldn't expect anything else from F1 at this stage. So too, we'll talk about the fastest, we'll talk about the times, we'll talk about the learnings from the very first private test of the 2026 season. So too, we'll talk about Maximilian Verstappen and why I think, as my principal supposition, that he's closer than ever, to joining Mercedes. I'm telling you, we'll get techier than techie things. We'll talk about times. We'll talk about Pablo Elizalde's God tier article. A chap who, by the way, writes for Motorsport magazine, one of the God tier sports journalistic publications to have ever journalistic. Pablo Elizalde has won the off-season, but in this article he talks about why you can't take these times seriously, why there is variables, it's the ice, it's the electric, you don't know what they're testing for, are they active aero on or off? We'll talk about it. John, you're an absolute legend, I appreciate you. And Sir John Perry, it's good to see you again, mate. This is a reunion of sorts as we get into the season, proper smahoosh to like. If you like the stream, then like the stream, do me and you a favour. Let's have a look at some I'll set the scene this way. Private testing, you bet your bottom dollar it was. I don't know why somebody doesn't just fly a drone up there though and take some shots. F1 for being so bloody nutty. I know they sold their soul to the devil. Of course Bahrain have the exclusive rights and I get all of that, but bloody Nora, you can't get some footage out. I record, this is what I'm reminded of, chat. Again, F1 can't get out of its own way. Liam Parker said that it was content. Don't leave any content on the cutting room floor then. Open up the bloody doors and let starving F1 fans that have been craving content all off season long, get some content. This isn't me solving for Fermat's last theorem. This is basics. My son is 5. He would know how to do this. The guys and girls, God tier ones over at the race, they flew out there, didn't they? Ed Straw and John Noble, and they kept on getting ushered away. They've got security all around the track saying that if there is a piece of land that's public but you get a sight of the Barcelona, the circuit, the Catalunya track, then that is private land. Are you having a giraffe? God tier levels of autocracy. This is nonsense, chat. I cannot believe that F1 is so brilliant at seizing defeat from the jaws of victory. This reminds me of two things. In the first instance, we've got to talk about, do you remember when Lando Norris dropped it on pole and then his time got deleted and then reinstated and Lewis was on pole for like 20 seconds and then they realised that they hadn't deactivated the bloody track infringement going round the last corner because there was an advantage. But do you remember that? That's what I feel like they've done this session, because you could go onto f1.com, log in and see the bloody times. If it's private, then deactivate the thing. This is exactly how noddy F1 is as of the time of writing. In the second instance, you recall going into the season finale last year, a driver's press conference who set front and centre Max Verstappen, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, the only remaining protagonists, the only drivers who could still win themselves a driver championship in 2025. They had themselves the press conference, and what did they do? A gangbuster press conference, an opportunity, if ever you've seen one, to grow the sport exponentially. What did they do, chat? Nothing. Where was the YouTube? Where was the stream? Where can I access this? Nowhere to be seen. F1 TV exclusively. I'm like, what are we doing here? You have to ask the question whether these bods really want to grow the sport or whether they're just content for it to be 24.5 billion, as some might at this stage. Let me show you this again, the private test, but there have been pictures and footage that's leaked, of course, because F1 fans' best efforts, ingenuity at each and every single corner. That's why they're F1 fans. Let me show you this. How can you not get excited? Inject it into my veins. T minus circa 40 days until we get ourselves an FP1 proper. That is a Mercedes W17 out here sounding like an aeroplane. Is this private testing F1 or is this Top Gun Maverick? Let's play it again. I cannot believe how good that sounds. And conversely, how disingenuous and stupid it is of the powers that be to close the doors and shield our gaze away from this. It makes no sense. I mean, if a car ever sounded quick, then it would be that. And it looks quite good too. Let's have a look at some Mercedes pictures. I mean, I understand that the Zero Pod W13 didn't look this similar, but they've got some tricky bits on that car. The bloody diffuser, the bloody floor fairings at the front. It is aka brand new barge boards. It looks a bit techie, this car. If my spidey senses are anything to go by, I think that Mercedes might be a championship contender. And here's the things that are going on. Very sexy at the back, the outwash and the inwash. There are all these things that will come to the fore. However, it's important that when we look at the times in a couple of seconds, that you bear a couple things in mind, not least of which are this. Pablo Elizalde writes this article and he says, don't take the times to heart. It is testing in the first instance. Testing is only useful for due diligence of the automotive, mechanical and engineering variety, but this is a different test to any other. You understand that it's a paradigm shift as far as the bloody rules and regs. 50% ICE as far as the PU, 50% electric, but so too overlay on top of that the active aero. It is too techie, and Pablo Elizalde puts it infinitely more succinctly than I ever could. He writes, in the early test, teams will prioritize reliability, harvesting efficiency and thermal stability over outright performance. That means conservative deployment mats, compromised aero settings to protect cooling margins and lap times that may be deliberately slow. Sandbagging central is what this private test is going to be. A car running clearly 8/10 may tell its engineer far more than one chasing a headline lap time at full attack. Crucially, power unit competitiveness may also be deliberately obscured. Manufacturers with confidence in their hardware have little incentive to show it earlier on. So all these bods are going to be sandbagging left, right and centre. Elizalde continues, previous generations of car, even cars dominated by DRS, still operated around a single aerodynamic baseline. Teams trimmed wings, adjusted ride heights and accepted the consequences everywhere else on the lap. Speed trap figures could mislead, but they were at least anchored to a broadly comparable configuration. Everything is changing. It's active aero on, active aero off. What does that do to the ride heights? The suspension, therefore. Elizalde continues, that means conservative deployment, mats compromise, aero settings, etc, etc. Onboards too will deceive in unfamiliar ways. Cars may appear unsettled, not because the underlying platform is flawed, but because the teams are deliberately forcing transitions between aero modes, ride heights therefore, and energy states to understand how systems interact. Already you've got 4 or 5 different states of car, right? And say you have an RB21, a god tier double DRS monster. Well, how will that translate into this rule and reg spec? Supposing it's slow with active aero off, you can't extrapolate for these numbers. I mean, it would be nice if they bloody opened the doors, then we could have ourselves a proper conversation, but bloody Nora. Conversely, writes Elizalde, a car that looks calm and tidy may be operating in a deliberately narrow conservative window that flatters the eye while hiding fundamental limitations. The 2026 cars, writes Elizalde, abandon that logic entirely. Active aerodynamics mean each lap can be stitched together from multiple deliberately contrasting aero states, governed not just by setup choice but by energy deployment rules baked into the regulations themselves. Instead, teams must now manage a constantly shifting balance between low drag and high downforce states. Is techie this. For the first time, this in 2026. In more than a decade, concludes Elizalde, the championship arrives at a genuine conceptual reset. New power units, active aerodynamics, revised energy deployment rules, and a wholesale rethink of car mass and dimensions have combined to create a technical environment unlike anything teams have previously tested. There is no longer a meaningful trimmed or untrimmed car to compare. Two cars setting identical lap times may have arrived there via completely different aerodynamic and electrical pathways. Two cars separated by a second may, in race-relevant configurations, be far closer than the timing screen suggests onboards to. It's going to get to... I don't even understand what's going on here. There are too many things. It's too difficult to normalise for performance across different cars, across different specs, across different setups. You'll have active aero on, active aero off. You'll have different ride heights. You'll have different energy deployment state. It's too much. It is far too much. And to that point, let me show you some times. In fact, let me show you some more pictures. This Audi monster. I don't hate it, chat. Genuinely, I quite like that Audi car. It looks very, very sexy. Sir John Perry, excuse me, you're a legend. And Umanch, let's go. That HP Alpha livery was... Go on then, let's have a look at some of these liveries. I didn't like the Audi car when the livery on the livery launch, but that, ladies and gentlemen, looks like an absolute monster. Put me in that car now. So too, let me show you the McLaren. I think the angles on that aren't too good, but I digress. The Mercedes we've already seen. Championship winning car, if ever you've seen one. And to that point, let me tell you this, segueing very nicely onto some odds chat. George Russell officially now is the favourite for the championship. They make him 26.6% favourite. Ergo, if you run a simulation of the championship 100 times, odds makers and experts say that George Russell now officially will win 26% of them. Max Verstappen is your second favourite, 24%. I think there is some in the know money coming in here for Mercedes. There are people, boys and girls at the factory, Brackley and Brixworth, that think that they're onto something. That is this 2026 or is this 2014? Split turbo hybrid settings, the beginning of a new era, can you say? 8 constructors championships back to back to back. Well, one team that sounds like they're struggling is Aston Martin. Absolutely nowhere. Can you imagine releasing this statement? The embarrassment. I would argue that radio silence is better than this. The AMR26 writes Aston Martin on Twitter, the official handle, will be in Barcelona later this week. What? Later this week? Why? Isn't the first day of testing today? Now, I know of the 5 days of testing, teams can only participate in 3. I get it. And there is efficiency sometimes to come in late if you can get some good work done back at the factory. However, rumour and word on the F1 curb is that they didn't intend to do this. This isn't like McLaren, who were there in person, ready to go. However, with a view to be efficient in their running times, might delay till tomorrow or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They will get their 3 days in. However, there's question marks, not just over Aston Martin, but over Williams. Williams will not go at all. You can take that one to the bank. Logistical ineptitude. Failing to prepare is to prepare to fail, James Vowles. And this from James Vowles, the dude who told us he was only invested, as far as Williams were concerned, in their sporting endeavours in 2026. At whose altar they wrote off 23 and 24 and 25. No bueno. What are we saying, James Vowles? This is not good enough. And then you understand this. Here are your times, whatever these been. And again, you understand that we've got a caveat with the normalization of a gazillion different variables. It is active aero. It is different rates of energy deployment at each and every single junction, whatever that means. And then you get Isaac Hadjar, 118.1. He was the quickest in that Red Bull Ford. But what was his... Well, you just don't know, right? Is that absolute turns pace? Was he going for it? What was the fuel? Like, what was the program even? Did he do that at the end of a stint or at the start? What tyres was he on? It's Cameron, what are they going to say when we are absolutely crushing it? You're talking about Mercedes. So, John, you're a legend out here gifting memberships. And if you are a brand new member, do yourself a favour and get yourself on the community tab, and shortly thereafter on the Discord, within which space we continue the ongoing F1 mode of discourse. Safat back in the house. Go on then. Here are the times. Isaac Hadjar to be champion. Then, of course, fast test on day one, 118.159. And you can take that to the bank. To that point, actually, on checking the odds, Isaac Hadjar is a popular bet. Loads of people are coming in for him for the Drivers' Championship. His odds have dramatically decreased. Now you can get Isaac Hadjar for the Australian Grand Prix at 66 to 1. So John Perry, you're an absolute legend. Goated. I feel like this is something of a reunion chat. We are back again like Hack. And then George Russell looming ominously in second on a 118.696.7 rounded. Franco Colapinto on a 120.189. I'm telling you, I'm very, very excited for this. I want to go scorched there for a second though on F1 again, and I don't want to labour the point, but bloody Nora, open the bloody gates. Like, private testing. It feels like an oxymoron of sorts. Talking to friend of the channel, Peter D. Windsor, who said it is pathetic. Again, tell me that you're sacrificing the essence and the purity of the sport at the altar of monetization without telling me. This is nonsense, chat. Open the bloody doors. I don't know why somebody hasn't got a cheeky drone up there. Maybe for next year, chat. How do you feel about that? Because accredited journos Ed Straw and John Noble, I mean, they're not line steppers exactly. Do you know what I mean? They're going to do as they're told. The security tells them to move on, they're going to move on. But I don't know. And then what were they bloody worried about? Where's this reliability issue? There was a cheeky red flag early on in the morning, Liam Lawson, but it wasn't an extended stop. Nothing about which one needs to be worried. Therefore, open up the doors, F1, and stop being silly. Do you know what I mean? Are we looking to grow a sport, or are we looking to grow a sport? What are we doing here? It makes no sense. Release the testing files, says Umach. Release the testing files, Umach. Like, what are we doing? Damn drones. Yeah, put the drones up, TWM. I don't know why somebody hasn't done it, but anyway, I digress. Let me tell you about this as well, because this is techier than techie things. You will have known already that Max to Mercedes. I was talking to talking on the shakedown with Baxter and Shez the other day, and when asked about my biggest storyline of the year, you bet your bottom dollar it will be driver silly season at the altar of Max Verstappen to Mercedes. Here's what we know. Conversations have already been had. You saw the pictures, non-AI pictures of Toto and Max Verstappen on the same boat. Sardinia settings. About what might they have been talking? Sons for a cheeky negotiation. 2027, Max Verstappen in a black car. You realise that Ola Kalunius, big C-suite exec level bod, he's the one that said that Max would look ever so good in them there black overalls. And this is all context, but I make no apology for labouring the point, because in a couple of months' time you will understand why I'm talking this way. Max Verstappen himself has said, listen, I just want to win. Forget soon to be 5-time champion. He wants to separate himself from the Fangios on 5. So too the Lewises and the Michael Schumachers, on 7. Max Verstappen wants to stand alone on 9 or 10 or 11. Mount Rushmore of F1 for 1. That's what Max wants to do, and that's why the next move is so important. Can't afford to make bad decisions in Formula 1. The margins are far too fine. So what do you think he's going to do? Of course he's going to pervade the competitive landscape in 2026 and make a decision shortly thereafter. Summer break. You know already that stipulation in his contract, there is a break clause that states if Max Verstappen is outside of the top 1, potentially, or 2, no longer 3, as was last year erstwhile. If he's outside of the top 2 at minimum, top 1 maximum, then he can null and void his contract with immediate effect. That, ladies and gentlemen, is techie. I feel like the circumstance there pushes Maximilian Verstappen into the arms of Toto, the boy who cried wolf, who, for the avoidance of doubt, will drop kick King George Russell, a brilliantly performant George Russell, in the chest. If it means that he gets a whiff of the signature of Maximilian Verstappen, you can take that one to the bank. Now we get this. On the back of the Miami negotiation, the Miami Grand Prix race wing negotiation, on the back of the summer break conversation, on the back of a gazillion conversations, on the back of Toto saying that he wouldn't flirt outside of the relationship, and then doing everything everything to break his promise. On the back of all of the aforementioned, this is what happens. You know that Max harbours aspirations to drive himself some Nordschleife, the 24 hours of... Couldn't do it though. The rumour, notwithstanding all desires and commercial boats floating by dint of a rising Max Verstappen tide, it looked like the fixture and the schedule was going to work against Max Verstappen ticking off a bucket list item, which is of course to drive the 24 hours of Nordschleife Nürburgring settings in 2026. It looked like it was going to be possible because in order to tick that box, he would need to complete in the NLS round 1, I think. But the fixture didn't lend itself well because there's an F1 race over the course of the same weekend, to which Toto and Mercedes flexed their not insubstantial might and said, you know what, guys and girls, you need to tinker, change this. Don't run NLS1 on a concurrent weekend with F1. That would be nonsense because Max can't take part then, and he definitely can't take part in the Nordschleife, the 24 hours of... So Toto said, you know what, let's have a word. This is let me leverage my Austrian might, try and pull some strings with a view to get our old mate Max, potentially Mercedes driver in 2.7, to have him tick off his dream. Here's what we know. The Nürburgring has adjusted its 2026 calendar to potentially allow Max Verstappen to race the 24 hours of Nürburgring. You bet your bottom dollar they did. Have you seen the numbers last year when Max was out here live streaming on NLS number 7? Round 7 or 9, I can't remember which. Did you see that there were record unprecedented numbers because a rising Max Verstappen tide floats all motorsport boats? Hundreds of thousands of people were tuned into those races, whereas normally single digits, you know what I mean? Couple hundred or a couple thousand at best. Woody's not winning the championship. Bloody no, Ronaldo. Is that what you think, mate? Go on, let's talk about this. Who do you guys think is going to win this championship? Because I keep going back and forth. Listen, as much as I'd love for Maximilian Verstappen, excuse me, to go and nail it, if he doesn't have the car, what do you expect him to do? I tell you what, but here's what I'm looking forward to this season as we round third. You've heard me say this a gazillion times, and I mean not to labour the point. I enjoy seeing Max Verstappen in a perverse sort of way. I enjoyed seeing Max Verstappen overturn the not insubstantial vehicular deficit that he experienced versus that MCL 39 in 2025. Why? Because that's when you see Max Verstappen at his brilliant best. Do you know what I mean? That's when you see him do crazy things like he did at Suzuka in qualifying and the race, like he did in Silverstone quali, like he'd managed to execute for at Saudi Arabia, Jeddah Corniche. That's when you see, and if you're a fan of brilliance, you kind of want to see it in plena color. Do you know what I mean? In all its splendour. So if Max doesn't have a car, as bad as that would be for Max in the championship, and of course as a Max Verstappen fan, notwithstanding, here on the Cameron CC channel, we will never sacrifice truth value nor objectivity at the altar of any cognitive dissonance. As much as I like brilliance, of course I would like to see Max Verstappen win, and Sir Lewis wouldn't be bad either. Win an 8th for Lewis and a 5th for Maximilian Verstappen. But if you ask me, if he hasn't got the car, on the occasions when he does make the difference, when he puts his foot on the rhetorical neck of Lando Norris and King George Russell in a dodgy car, I think we're going to have some times. However, chat, yeah, we'll get there. South Acura legend, I promise. We will get there this year. Can't sleep on McRumble. That is wild. Here's the problem, chat. Look, if past his prologue, F1 history doesn't repeat, but sometimes it does rhyme. I am hesitant, therefore, to anoint King George the driver's champion. Not just yet. We need more evidence, do you know what I mean, to build ourselves a case. However, if my spidey senses and intuition is anything to go by, I think, chat, Houston, we might have a problem here. I think George is coming to the fore, and if he gets himself a car in 2026, it could get techier than techie things. Cameron, if George can win a championship this year for Mercedes, then what's the need for Max? Go on then, Derek, to that point. I don't think, you know, the answer to that question, Derek, is rooted in this. It is best explained by this example. I've never watched an NLS race in my life. Prior to Max competing in it, I couldn't even tell you what it was. I didn't even know that it was a prerequisite to do NLS rounds before you do the 24 hours of Nürburgring. Change Max Verstappen for King George Russell of Kings Lynn, Norfolk. And I think that would still be the case. If George had raced in the NLS, I don't think anybody would have watched. Nobody would have cared. And that's why, Derek, it's important for Toto, the boy who cried wolf, to sign Max Verstappen. Now more than ever, keen is he to amend for his strategic faux pas 2016, not signing Max Verstappen when he had the opportunity, seizing defeat from the jaws of victory. I think Toto's desperate to amend for that mistake because he's Toto Wolff. He doesn't like losing. He's a billionaire, for Pete's sake. Count on one hand the number of times when he's lost at anything. And so in signing Max for Mercedes and securing the next generation, another 8 championships potentially, just as they did in 2014. Remember, F1 history doesn't repeat, but sometimes it does rhyme. Then Toto kind of needs Max. As brilliant as George will win championships for sure. He's brilliant, but he's not invincible. He's not Iron Man. He's not the next Lewis or the next Senna. I would argue that as at the time of writing, it's like you can't make a case at the moment for putting George on the Mount Rushmore of F1. You can't not make a case for putting Max on the Mount Rushmore of F1, and therein lies the difference. A rising Max tide floats all motorsport boats, and I don't think you can quite say the same for King George Russell of Kings Lynn, Norfolk. Not now, not just yet. Maybe he goes and nails it this year. Maybe, perhaps, but I don't know. I hope Lewis gets a better race engineer. Well, Safat to that point, there's a couple of different dudes in. They've already replaced. They've got an interim, Carlos Santi, whatever that means, and they're looking to replace him with some chap whose surname is Grosjean. I issue not. But the problem with Grosjean is that there is gardening leave, meaning therefore he won't be available for another 3 or 4 months, 3 to 6 months, unless they're prepared to buy him out, which I don't think they will. Let me tell you about Scuderia Ferrari as we round third. Listen, you cannot write what's ahead for Scuderia Ferrari. They always do this PR stuff, and you'll be forgiven for thinking that they're going to win the championship every single year, right? The furore of the tifosi, the passion, the memes. You guys have seen already the Charles Leclerc meme where he's patron saint of something, and Fred and Lewis Hamilton. Like it's hard not to look at them as heroes, but sadly for them, heroes only exist in fairy tales. You know what I mean? Yeah, you don't have to suspend your disbelief to understand how this might transpire. So, John, you're an absolute legend. And if you're a brand new member, get yourself over to the community tab and get yourself into the old Discord so we can continue this conversation. But I digress. Scuderia Ferrari, I am not sure. People say that stability is fundamental for success in Formula One. They are about to encroach upon a time that is anything but stable. Frederick Vasseur, 5 races. Lewis Hamilton, potentially another 12 months. Potentially. What if Lewis jumps in that car and sees that the car's not very good? What, you don't think he's entitled to just hang up his Nomex and say, you know what? No más. That's it. Ya está. Se acabó. I am done. Of course. Absolutely. Donald, you're a legend. Blessings for this beautiful channel and new season from San Antonio, Texas. Let's go. San Antonio, Texas, with a Holland twist. Let's go. I love what you've done there, Donald. I missed it in the first instance. But yeah, I just think there's too much pressure. I think they need... Let me tell you again, Pablo Elizalde, subscribe to Motorsport Magazine if you want already, because in that you get all these god tier articles from Matt Bishop, one of the goatiest F1 journalists to ever pick up a pen. Pablo Elizalde too. He says this: the expectation for Ferrari is at unprecedented levels. Before they've had excuses, Lewis takes a year to bed in, or more, depending on who you're speaking to. He's got the bloody brakes and it's Brembo now, where it's carbon industry before and ground effect here. You had all these layered excuses. Do you know what I mean? So too Frederick Vasseur. I mean, he hadn't had his guy in there in Loic Serra building a car. They'd all come in halfway through the season, but this time there are zero excuses. This is Loic Serra's car. This is Lewis Hamilton's second season. This is Frederic Vasseur's third or fourth now, I can't remember which, but he can't make the excuse that he's yet to get his feet underneath the Scuderia Ferrari table, the red car with the yellow badge and the black prancing horse atop. The excuses are in the rear view. There are no more. Simply, and with that, the expectation and pressure, does one of these right, goes up in a way that's almost parabolic. And Pablo Elizalde in his article speaks to it. He says too that they shifted the focus, right? They didn't even develop the 2025 car, lest we forget they had the quickest car at the end of 2024. They said they were going to change everything, the bloody suspension set, everything. Why? Law of diminishing returns, surely, in the final season of the ground effect era. WTF, Ferrari, make poor low-level decisions. Why don't you? Adrian Newey, nowhere to be seen. Again, can you spell seizing defeat on the aerodynamic jaws of victory? Now, however, there are zero excuses, zero, none. Frederic Vasseur has 5 races to turn around this ship. If not, everybody is at stake. For Lewis Hamilton, this could be his final season. He might not even make it that far. Why would he? If the car is SH1T, why would Lewis persist in his 41st cycle? There's no need for it. Sack it off, hang up your Nomex and go and do something else. Go and attend the Met Gala, Lewis. Do you know what I mean? It looks like at the moment you would enjoy that more than driving a rubbish car and hanging around in the carbon fibre zone. Charles Leclerc too, as brilliant as that dude is. Why would he give another year of his prime? Why? Why would he give another year of his prime to this SH1TT? I wouldn't. Nonsense. And by the way, if we're talking about Lewis, and I know I'm dotting around here, this Michel Grosjean chap, he's now, I don't think he's the panacea. He needs himself a car. Pablo Elizalde writes that the SF26 is a car built on Ferrari's terms, with Ferrari's priorities front and centre and Ferrari's expectations, and so it needs to be a winner from the start. Full stop, new paragraph. In order to achieve that, Ferrari will need to break its recent tradition of failing to emerge on top when the big rules reset takes place. Ferrari failed to set the pace in 2009, in 14, in 22, and so in 2026 it will be unprecedented circumstances. It will have to show it has learned lessons from its past to finally produce a package that lives up to its resources and reputation. Does that even sound like Ferrari to you? learn from previous mistakes. It sounds like a juxtaposition to me. By compromising its 25 season, Ferrari chose its moments. Now it must show that it can execute, and therein lies the problem. Here's where it's Houston, we have a problem. I don't think they can execute. Yeah, they can get some pit stops done sometimes, 2 seconds flat and all. But bloody Nora, execution is the thing that Scuderia Ferrari have been lacking for all the while. They've huffed and puffed, but they can't blow the house down. They just don't have it in them. And herein lies the problem. I want to hear Cam's best Scouse accent. I'm doing it, Sir John, already. I can't. I'm rubbish. The only one that I've got going, but that I have been practicing, is the old... We are checking, and it's the old GP2 engine. You must always leave a space. I haven't been practicing enough. Ferrari doesn't learn lessons. Lessons learn Ferrari. Very well said, Jacoby there, to be fair. El plan in Scouse. I can't. I'll get there in the end. The Green Mexico City Pirelli podium caps. 2 definitely runoffs on her. What are you saying, Shiva? Yeah, listen, I'm here for this F1 thing now. Open up the bloody doors and let us see. There are a couple of days left of worth of. They've had a testing all this week, 3 or 5 days is how much they can use. Some of the teams aren't even there yet. We don't get to see any images, just some timings. Did you see that as well? As in round 3rd. What geniuses. It's meant to be a private test. However, on the F1, the official F1 feed, you can see all the timings. What are we doing? Like, come on. Again, reminiscent of Transponder Gate and Lewis and Lewis is on pod. No, it's Lando. No, actually, it's Lewis. No, it's Lando, a $24.5 billion entity. market capitalization. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Liberty Media want to just sell up already, don't they? Surely. Best case scenario, scrapes together one win, makes a big song and dance about it, and then retires. That's the end of the story. Here's the problem, though. If we're talking about that, listen, I'm a bit tired of disparaging Sir Lewis Hamilton's name. Safak says, I'm a Liverpool fan, John. Let's go. You will never walk alone, but they're struggling this year, aren't they? Here's the Lewis Hamilton problem, and Damon Hill spoke about it yesterday. We went through it on the Undercut podcast. It still irks me that they stole the Undercut podcast name. Really, really irks me. I wish that I'd patented it. Anyway, here's the problem for Lewis. When he's had his Weetabix, like when he has the car underneath him, I would still attest that Lewis is one of the best, if not the best, that I've ever seen in his prime. Like, he just have this unerring confidence that nobody's quicker than him. Not dissimilar from Senna and Michael Schumacher and now Max Verstappen, all in there, hey. However, can Lewis Hamilton, can he, and does he even want to, do it on a rainy day in Scunthorpe? Does he have the metal and the minerals to do it when the times and the circumstances are not as favourable as you'd like? That's the killer question. And I think I can forgive Sir Lewis for being, 41, bro. Risk management settings, you're a legend, Sir John. I appreciate you. 2026, let's go. Look, I appreciate Sir Lewis for just being a human being sometimes. And if he doesn't want to race, rewind 12 months ago, and I would have said, "Oh, get your sort it out, Lewis." Do you know what I mean? Get your head in the game, chap. Don't you want to be a champion? But sometimes people just want to go and be a human being, or a rapper, or a humanitarian. And sometimes you got to extend some, as somebody that's given as much to the sport as Sir Lewis, and sometimes you got to extend them some grace. Sky Taylor couldn't believe that RB22 with its 0 pods and the gap to the back to put air straight. I did see it. Don't be surprised if it's there or there. But there were a couple of them have got this weird diffuser that's kind of like on the limits, maybe not necessarily within the spirit of the regulations. Legal, but not necessarily within the spirit. I think Mercedes have something similar. It feels like Mercedes are just the innovators out here. I don't trust Red Bull Ford because they've only been designing the car for a couple of months, like wholeheartedly. And therein lies the problem. I feel like Mercedes have been wholly devoted to this car, this W17, for about 2 years. They've had no other dog in this fight. They weren't competing for a season in either 25 or 24. They were nowhere near. So what else? A victory here or there, 2 from George last year. Oh, it's techie. I cannot wait. Cadillac Ferrari house. Couldn't you be Peter or Mark or why, John? Sorry, Cameron, but just went and got old. Emo. Sometimes Occam's razor is the one. Sometimes that's it, right? The easiest of explanations is the one that you want to go with. Jeff, you're an absolute legend. You guys are goats one and all. I did say yes. Did you not see Lewis Hamilton's passion in the latest Ferrari marketing release? He's still obsessed. Go on then, TWM. Let's talk. You've got me back on point, TWM, very quickly. If we're talking about Lewis, I just think he's just loser. Hearing Damon Hill, go and listen to the Undercut podcast. When I say Undercut, I feel like that's mine. But no, Damon Hill and Mark Hughes. And in that Damon Hill speaks very honest and earnestly to just being past your prime. Damien Hill says he woke up one day and he just lost a 10th. Like, it just wasn't there. He wasn't there for him. He just couldn't. I think this is just this is the gift and curse of Father Time, right? When you're 41, you are not the same person nor the same athlete. You might look the same as you were when you were 21 or 28 in your prime. It just doesn't work. Nobody's been able to revert. You might, with the advance of technology and medicine, you might be able to prolong your career, but you can't stay in the prime. It's just this impossible. It is literally Tom Cruise Mission Impossible. It just doesn't work that way. And so as enthusiastic as Lewis might be, I mean, if you had another, let's say you had Carlos Sainz alongside him, all right then, so maybe we're talking now. But the one bod that Lewis doesn't want to have alongside it, if his deficiency, TWM, is speed in absolute terms. The one driver, even more than Max probably, that you don't want to have alongside you to show up those deficiencies, to cast a bright, shiny light, to let everybody see that you've lost a tenth or two in pace at the ripe old age of 41. The one chap that you can't have alongside you in the same car is modern day Jordan Lazy, because when he's had his Weetabix, as he had done at Abu Dhabi in 2025, it's like he's a lot like Max Verstappen. Not quite. He's not as racy as Max Verstappen, but you saw the stat that in I want to say in 25. No, that's not the stat. I was going to say that Charles was the only person to overtake Max Verstappen in 25, but he wasn't. There was a couple of others. I will always appreciate your boy can't talk anymore. So John, look at this. I need to go away and go to my bed again. Pipe and slippers settings as your boy rounds third base on 500,000 years old. I will always appreciate Lewis Hamilton the same as Michael. I don't hate it, Sir John. I don't hate it, and he's worthy of that. The things that in the off season, I've been watching some of the historic races and listening to like he's not a bad peddler, Louis. I mean, some of the time he's not bad. He's not bad. People that are brand new coming to the sport kind of miss the best of him, though. You know what I mean? 07. If you definitely a season that you want to go and watch, here he is, Sir John Perry in the Sir John. Look at me. No better F1 content. No better F1 content community than right here, Facts. You're a legend, Sir John, and I appreciate you, mate. You're far too kind, as per usual. Charles in the fast car will be scary, so you'll probably see it next year, Emo. You might well see it next year. Why would he stay? Why would he stay? No chance. Full stop, new paragraph. I want to see all of the best drivers in 2027 in the best cars. And by of whom do you speak, Cam? Charles, Max, George, Lando, maybe if he's had his Weetabix done. Lewis sails off into the sunset, and then it gets techie. Potentially even Max and George in the same car. Oh, the humanity. It gets techier than techie things. You guys have been legends, one and all. I appreciate you. We are back again, like hack, and then